We're very excited to have Mr. Clark on board with us effective January 1. He brings to AccessHR over 30 years of experience advising clients on HR and employment law matters. We will be discussing today complying with California's new paid sick leave law. And with that, I will hand this over to Lee. As I had mentioned earlier, this session will be recorded and posted on our website. So with Lee, with that.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for dialing in. This is a new, very extensive piece of legislation, different from many other pieces of legislation that you've had to deal with over the years in California, which normally had a cutoff point of 10 employees or 20 or maybe even 50. But this applies to virtually every employer. This is, it covers people with one employee. So if you are a mom and pop corner store or you are Google, this law applies to you. What I'm going to try to do today is to present this material in a Q&A format. So I'm going to ask the questions and answer them, but you will have the opportunity to write in any questions that you might have in the chat section, and if it's something that I haven't gotten to, please fill in that chat section with your question, and if you think of something after this is over, just contact Priscilla and it'll get back to me and we'll try to answer it. As we're going through this, please try to think about how this law may affect you day to day. As Priscilla mentioned, I've been working in the HR labor relations area for 30 years. I am an attorney, licensed in the state of Michigan. I didn't get my license here in California because God knows we have enough attorneys here, so I hire them when I need them. But I've been advising clients for the last 20-some years, and actually met AccessHR through that process because I ran, in essence, a number of HR departments for small companies on a 1 or 2 day a week basis. And AccessHR just gave me wonderful, wonderful service. So that's one of the reasons that I joined with them to kind of help in situations like this. So I'm going to try to hit some practical things, but you might be thinking about, okay, if I have to do this, what's it going to affect and where, etc. Okay. As it states, this is the Healthy Workplaces, Healthy Families Act. So anytime you have a title that's that long, you know it's probably a problem. It's referred to normally as the Paid Sick Leave Act, but as you will see, the definition goes way beyond what probably you and I have thought about as being sick leave. Okay.
Oh.
Hold on, slight technical.
Okay. Hold on 1 second. Please bear with us 1 minute. Let me see. Okay. Go ahead. Continue.
I don't know what that is on the screen if you're seeing what I'm seeing, but my father was a mechanic, and he said, you know, a craftsman never blames his tools, so I will not blame the computer. To whom does the law apply? Virtually all Californians, employers with 1 or more employees are covered by this law. So ergo, it is the most extensive piece of legislation by definition one can have. It is a piece of, I think one can aptly call it a social piece of legislation. That is, it is getting at certain beliefs that the legislators of the state of California have as to what California employers should offer to employees and what problems they have, etc. I am going to suggest to you that if you have the time and interest, and you probably should have, that you read through AB 1522. In the beginning, it goes through all of the logics that they use to apply this law, to put it into effect. And there's some basic assumptions there that you may quarrel with rather. But essentially what they're trying to do is to have this omnibus approach to providing time off for employees to handle a variety of difficulties. Now, does the law apply to everybody? Well, mostly, but there are a few exceptions. And the exceptions to this law are probably ones that you might not have guessed. Number one, if your employees are covered by a collective bargaining agreement, and if it contains a paid sick leave provision that gives at least 3 days of sick leave per year, you are exempt from this law. So that's for all bargaining units of any type, shape, or form. Secondly, if you are in the construction industry and you're covered by a collective bargaining agreement, even if it doesn't contain a paid sick leave provision, you're exempted from this law as well. If you're getting the feeling already that the coverage on this thing, and who was in and who was out, might have something to do with lobbying, and if you're cynical like I am, you're probably right. Okay. Providers of in-home supportive services are not covered. Those are the people that were tried, where it was tried to get them to put them into a labor union, which did not happen. But people who provide those services on a paid basis, normally work for a company, they're not covered. And then finally, certain airline employees, and the airline employees that have been singled out to not have this coverage are mainly what we used to call flight attendants, etc. Okay? So, unless you're in one of those categories with your organization, you're covered. Does the law apply to part-time as well as full-time employees? The answer to that is a resounding yes. And this is the main thing that this legislation was trying to address. The majority of companies, do not provide paid sick leave or very minimal sick leave to part-time employees. This law says that it applies to anyone as long as they work more than 30 days in a year in California. Okay? So if you have people who are, if you're a multi-state company and you have people that come and work in California on an on-again, off-again basis, and it may get to 30 days in total, not 240 hours, but 30 days, you're going to have to track that. And those people will be covered, okay? So when you're looking at the barista getting your coffee in the morning before you get to work, all those people who probably didn't have sick leave before are going to have it now, even if they work a few hours a week. One of the issues that has come up is how do I deal with exempt employees who being exempt from overtime regulations, because we don't keep hours on them. Because if we did, they probably wouldn't be exempt employees. Okay. The law says that when you're dealing with exempt employees, you should treat them as if they are working 40 hours per week. Exception is if you have a exempt employee who works a shorter number of hours per agreement. Say you have a finance person that works on a 30-hour-a-week schedule, but it's going to vary depending on the need of the work. You can use 30 hours as the basis for that employee. But, you know, keep in mind that if they're going beyond that, which they normally do and which you haven't up until now been keeping track of, you're probably going to need to keep track of that, those numbers of hours, so that you're not shortchanging them. When does the law go into effect and how much paid sick leave must be granted? Okay. The law goes into effect as of July 1st of this year. And as mentioned, employers will be required to provide employees with 24 hours of paid sick leave per year. That's the max accrual, if you will, that you are required to provide. You can, of course, give more if that is your interest. That's up to you, but you have to do the 24 hours for sure, and you need to make sure that that happens. Having read through the law a number of times, they talk about a year, and a year is not defined as a calendar year, so we know that that's not the case. And so I think to be safe, what you should do is use a year from the time the employee is hired. So if you do annual employment reviews, for example, on an employee's anniversary date, you're kind of tracking it now. But you'll need to do that, and the law does allow. We'll talk about that. For you to accrue, this requires that you accrue hours from one year to the next. So there's a maximum accrual of 48 hours under this law. So if you work, say, you work enough hours to get your 3 days of sick leave in the first 6 months of employment, then you do not have to accrue any more beyond that. Starting with month 13, the number of hours that you have on the books for that person then is added to the numbers that they begin to accrue in the second year, and the max on that is 48 hours. Okay? You can, if you want, get away from some of the record keeping and accruals if you provide a sick leave bank, say as of January 1st of 24 hours. So some people do that. They do that with your existing sick leave program. I am sure some of you who, for instance, my wife gets 6 days of sick leave per year. That's a bank that's created as of January 1. Well, if that's the way you want to handle it for the purposes of this law, you can do that and have it be as of January 1. So if I've accrued, if I started in September and then I've accrued a day of sick leave, and then comes January 1st, you give me a bank of 3, then it's a bank of 4. And then you don't have to worry about any accruals from that point on. as we will discover, I mean, there's some latitude in how you do it, but as long as you give people the opportunity to use the time, that's what's key. Maybe the next logical question is, well, when are employees entitled to use their sick leave benefits? Okay? Once an employee has put in 90 days of employment, doesn't have to be continuous employment, it can be interspersed over a great amount of time, that's when they can start to use it. After they are entitled to use it, they can use it as it's accrued, and as I mentioned, their unused will carry over to the next year up to that maximum of 6. Now, here's one of the first real problems I have as someone who worked in a number of facilities for a number of years before I went over to the dark side and started to consult. The law says that the employer can put some curbs on the amount of time that employee has to take these sick leave hours in chunks. Having said that, the maximum that you can require of an employee is 2 hours. So if I want 2 hours off for use of this sick leave provision, you have to give it to me if I meet the requirements. And as you'll see, the requirements are wide open. Okay, so you're going to have to track this very closely. Now, for hourly paid employees, you probably have a decent system set up to do that. But if you are talking about salaried, non-exempt employees or exempt employees, you're probably having them fill out, hopefully you're having them fill out a timesheet so that, you know, if you're not having them clock, to track this time. So you're going to need to do that. You're going to have to make sure that they're getting all the time to which they are allowed. Okay? So again, after 3 months, after 90 days rather, they get to use it. So there are a number of sick leave policies out there. I know because I've created probably 100 or 200 of them that says you begin to, a typical plan would be you begin to accrue sick leave benefits as of your date of employment, but you can't use any of them until you've been with us for, say, 6 months. Okay? That's not going to comply with the law. And so you have this law that is set to affect mainly new part-time employees. That's what I mean. That's really where it's at, where it's aimed. But it's going to affect your whole policy because you will have to adjust your sick leave policy to allow for the usage required by law. Again, 2-hour segments is considered acceptable. And the employee another exciting part of this law is that, as it says, employees can request as little as 2 hours off and make such requests either verbally or in writing. Again, many companies that track this information want to have their sick leave time requested in advance, and they want to have it in writing. Okay? Now, the law specifically says that the employee can ask for it verbally. So you can no longer require it to be in writing. If the employee knows that they're going to be off using this time, say for a doctor appointment, they're supposed to tell you that that's the case. But the law says the lead time should be given where reasonably possible. So again, this is probably going to run up against the language in your sick leave or PTO policy. So be thinking about that. It's for those of us who have worked for quite a while and have worked in various environments. I mean, we've always felt that you needed some amount of control, but this is the amount of control that you're going to be able to exact is now covered by the law. Okay. Was the minimum number of paid sick leave hours an employer is required to allow an employee to accrue under this law? As we said, the minimum number of hours is 48 or six work days over, in essence, part of a 2-year period. So again, if I accrue 24 hours in 9 months of employment and do not use any of those, starting with month 13, I will have 24 hours and again begin to accrue up to the 48, if that is the way you want to handle it. But you have to do that as a minimum. Does the law define under what circumstances an employee may use paid sick leave? The answer is yes, and the definition is much broader than the definition contained in most sick leave programs. If you have a PTO plan, you may have a situation where, PTO is designed to be just for me, for whatever use that I want to make of it, so you're not going to normally want a lot of backup information from me on that. But if you have a standard sick leave policy that says this is the way that, and these are the purposes and the only purposes for which you can use this, this is going to change, I guarantee you, based upon the broadness of the definition. So, employees may use paid sick time for, there we go, the diagnosis, care, or treatment of an existing health condition for you, for the employee, okay? That is kind of the standard bare bones, what we used to think of as sick leave, okay? Secondly, it can be used for preventive care for an employee or an employee's family member. So I want to go take a physical, or I have to take my child for a physical, or I have to take one of the other people who are defined as a family member, which we will get to. Okay? That's all a legitimate use of this time. The third area is that it may also be used if the employee is a victim of domestic violence, sexual assault, or stalking, and they need time off to deal with that. Okay, so that's why this law is not called just strictly the Paid Sick Leave Act, because this time the lawmakers decided that it would be a good thing for employers to provide time off if a person was dealing with these kind of issues, and that it be paid time off in under this plan. Now, most employers that I have worked with, and I've had probably 200 clients in my consulting practice as president of the Clark Hydrick Group, I don't know of an employer who has said to an employee, I'm sorry you were sexually assaulted, but you can't have any time off to go to the doctor, to fill out a police report, to do what you need to do. Okay. The assumption underlying most of these laws in California is that there are gazillions of bad employers who won't give people time off for things that are necessary and which they feel are necessary. And I think we would all agree that this is something where it would be necessary. But anyway, this falls under sick leave, time off under this law. Now, just as an aside, this law does not trump or change anything that's in existing laws under other California statutes. So, as you are probably aware, if you have paid sick leave, you are required to bank half of that up to a max number for family matters. Okay, so that still is in effect. Okay, so don't think that this changes that definition, but this is just, but it expands it. Okay. Let's go back. Yeah. Okay. What is the definition of a family member? The law defines a family member to be any of the following. A child, and this is quoting right from the law, which for the purpose of this law means biological, adopted, or foster child, stepchild, legal ward, or a child to whom the employee stands in loco parentis. This definition of child is applicable regardless of the age or dependence status. So if you got one of those kids living with you at home that's graduated from college and can't find any work, and you need to be off with them, they're covered. For those of you who didn't take Latin in high school, which nobody does anymore, the local parentis thing means that you're standing in the stead of a parent. So in many households, particularly inner city households, you may have a child being raised by an aunt. That aunt may be your employee. If the aunt / your employee wants time off to take care of the child whom they are watching, the law covers them as a family member. A biological, adoptive, or foster parent, step-parent, or legal guardian of an employee, or the employee's spouse, or registered domestic partner, or a person who, again, stood in loco parentis when the employee was a minor child. So if you've got a parent that you're taking care of that fits any one of these individuals in this broad definition, time off to take care of their needs, medical needs, is also covered under this law, and you would have to allow the person to be off for that purpose. Okay. Then we get to more typical types of definitions of family members: a spouse, a registered domestic partner, and it does say registered, a grandparent, a grandchild, a sibling. Okay, so all of those people are into the definition of a person who's in your family for whom you can have time off to take care of their medical needs. Next question is, if paid sick leave is an accrued benefit, must the employer pay the employee upon termination for any accrued, unused paid sick leave? The answer is no, but all of us lawyer types always give you answers no, but, you know, so I'm sorry, but this is a no, but answer. If you are using a paid time off program that rolls in vacation time into that PTO, you have time off for sick leave, and, you know, if sick leave is not separated out, if sick leave is part of your PTO program, and you decide to use your ongoing program to meet the requirements of this law, then that becomes an accrued paid benefit, and you're going to have to consider that as something that you're going to have to pay for when a person leaves. I don't believe that the law specifically addresses it, but I would bet I am more convinced that that would be the case, as I've explained it to you, that it would be an accrued benefit you have to pay. I'm even more convinced of that than I am that Kentucky's going to win the NCAA tournament, and I'm extremely convinced of that. Okay. Additionally, if an employee is rehired within a year of termination, then accrued unpaid sick leave must be restored. So if you have an employee that terminates, don't put their records off in some faraway place where you can't get to them, because if for some reason you rehire that person because their other job didn't work out or whatever, they come back to you within a year, then you have to pick up the amount of sick leave that you have on the books for them. Okay. Does the law require new posting and record-keeping requirements? Answer, yes. No good new employment-based law is ever passed that doesn't have its own poster. That's why in your break room you have 5,230 posters, or a big laminated poster that you buy which has both state and federal laws on it, and it's getting too big to hang it anywhere. Okay. Now, after this is over, if you have one of those, as most of you do, I would double check it to see if this new law is in the California section of your big laminated poster. Or perhaps they're going to send you a new laminated poster with this if they didn't catch it the first time around. However, if neither of those is the case, you have to post this thing separately. Now, you can obtain this online, but AccessHR, being the great company that it is going to make this available to you along with the slides from this presentation online. So you will be able to just download this poster and stick it up. Okay? So you got it. So it will be available to you, you'll be in good shape. As far as record keeping goes, this is a fairly extensive piece of legislation and as it regards record keeping. Okay, employers must provide an employee with written notice showing the amount of sick leave or PTO accrued either on the employee's wage statement or on a separate writing provided each payday. Okay, so I don't know how many of you have your sick leave or PTO bank accounted for on your pay stubs. I'm guessing maybe half, maybe less. Okay, so this is something that you're going to have to do, or you are going to have to do your own hand accrual at your office, or you're going to have to accrue it if you do your own payroll, you don't job it out. You're going to have to reprogram the computer to provide this if you're not already doing so. Okay? Records must be kept for a minimum of 3 years and made available to the Labor Commissioner upon demand. So, I was just interested, so I called Paychecks because they're a fairly major outfit, and they have been handling the payroll for my little consulting firm for 20 years, and I said, are you set up to provide this information? And they said, yep. And I said, what if I want to keep my existing program for full-time employees and have a different program for part-time employees? Can you run 2 different accrual systems based upon whether the employee falls in one category or another? They said, yep, we can do that. We will do that. I said, and how much extra are you going to charge for that? And they said, we're not. And so I am relaying that information. However, being the good attorney that I am, or at least an attorney, I will give you the caveat that I don't consider the information that I got as being divinely inspired by God. So when you are about to look at how you're going to track this information, if you're going to use your payroll service, I would see how they're going to handle it, when it's going to be available, and whether it's going to cost any money for you. Okay. I would have, from a practical standpoint, I would have the inclination, if you can, to be able to set these sick leave records aside, particularly if you've got a number of part-time employees and you've got you've got a fair amount of turnover in your business, and if you're going to have a problem with anybody, it's probably going to be with one of these people. I would separate those out if I could, so that if there is a complaint filed, you can pull your sick leave accrual records and make them available to someone from the Labor Commissioner's office without them having to go through all your employment records. Okay? Anyone who's been through a Labor Commissioner's wage and hour audit knows that for most of us, you'd rather have a root canal than have to go through that kind of an exercise. Okay? But if you have them set aside and you have them neat and they look good, you're gonna pass the vision test on that, and you probably are going to be in much better shape, and they're not going to go trekking around in your records. Okay, so I would do that, but understand that you're going to have to keep these kind of records to meet the requirements of the law. Are there fines assessed against employers who do not comply with the requirements of the paid sick leave law? Well, you knew the answer to that was yes. Okay, and in this case, again, this is just a personal opinion now, but there is pages of this law that deal with the fine structure for not complying with the law and the powers that are given to the Labor Commissioner in dealing with your noncompliance that go way, way beyond the potential, in most cases, for your non-enforcement or non-following the law. In other words, unless you fire somebody because they used their rights under this law, if it's just a case of you made it difficult for them to use it, etc. I mean, the damage to the employee is probably just a lack of a few hours of paid sick leave. But this law is very, very broad in giving the Labor Commissioner powers to go in and to even give an employee who they feel has been harmed, if they are alleging that they were terminated because of this, because they brought an issue under the law. Either they complained to you or they filed an action with the state and you fired them. They have the right to reinstate the employee with back pay. Okay? So here's my major concern. 90% of employers are not going to take adverse action against an employee for using their benefits under any law, including this one. Okay, we're just not in that business as employers to do that kind of thing. But in the state of California, it is assumed that there are at least as many bad guys as good guys, And so when they write this law, they want to have, you know, the force of war to bring down upon you if you don't do it. So let us assume that you have a bad employee who is not reporting to work on a regular basis, and they're not in on time, et cetera, and you, because you've worked with somebody like me, have been counseled to keep good records, okay? And hopefully you do that, but what you don't do is you don't include any time that they're using the rights under this law in your disciplinary actions. You have to, in my opinion, just consider this as a washout. You have to say that they are entitled to this time off, and any actions, disciplinary actions that you take are for other reasons. The reason I say this is that the plaintiff bar is going to take a look at this law, and they're going to see if they can tie in an action, an adverse employment action, into an employer's noncompliance under this law. And if they can, then they can go to the labor commissioner and have them go through this extensive review that they can do and take whatever remedial actions they feel necessary. And it's pretty broad. And the fines can be up to $4,000, and they're cumulative. So be very careful when dealing with this law and how you deal with normal employment actions that you're taking that might overlap into this area. Okay, so what are some of the practical problems employers face in implementing the Healthy Workplaces, Healthy Families Act? Okay, the law, obviously, from what you've already heard and seen or read, you know that there's a number of challenges that you have to face. Here are just some of the ones that have occurred to me. Number one, do I expand my existing paid sick leave or PTO program to include part-time employees or who may at present be excluded, to include part-time employees who may be excluded, or do I establish a separate program for part-time employees? Okay. The option to set up a separate program is up to you. If you have a plan that provides for a high level of benefits, and if it's a PTO program, you may want to say that this is my program as it exists for regular full-time employees, and this is my program for part-time employees. There is nothing in the law that I have read, and in any webinar like this, I would also always add, you know, always check with your local attorney on any of these kind of issues, but particularly if you use one. But you can run dual systems. And for those employers who might be seasonal and have a base number of regular full-time employees, and in certain seasons be bringing in a whole number of part-time employees, it may be to your benefit to run two systems, okay? And say, here's the system. Instead of getting a 6-day bank out of the box like we're doing for full-time employees, you're going to accrue, starting with the 90th day, exactly what the law requires. It's up to you, but you're going to have to deal with the, you know, again, you're going to have to deal, in that case, with a dual record-keeping system. I find it amazing that the legislature could just say, hey, keep these kind of records and provide them forever in each payday, when they've been pretty miserable at trying to handle things with their own computers and DMV, etc. But evidently they think you can do this and do it by July 1. Okay, so but think about that. If I have an existing sick leave program, will I need to expand the definition of what constitutes acceptable reasons for the use of sick leave? The answer is probably yes. Okay. If you have a PTO system that says you're entitled to this much time off, and we frankly don't care what you're using it for, that's yours, it's a bank, don't ask me for any more after that, whatever. Okay? Then you're fine, because you're not going to be telling people they can't do it. What you will have to do, however, is make sure that you don't have any requirements that are more restrictive than what the law requires for using the time, i.e. the 2 hours and the verbal and the broad reasons for using it. Okay, so you'll need to take a look at that. Okay. What changes do I need to make in my record-keeping system to comply with the law? So as we've been talking, I mean, you have to take a look at what you can do, particularly if you're running your own system. What is my system capable of? Can I track this? Do I have the bandwidth to do this? Do I have the capability of displaying accrued sick leave, PTO hours on an employee's paycheck? If you're not doing it on a paycheck, you have to give them a separate record as of each payday. Okay, again, check with your contractor, and check with your, if you got your own system, talk to your IT guys now. That don't wait till June unless you want to have heart attacks, etc. Another thing you're going to have to do is, am I set up to do a professional employee orientation that explains to my employees their rights under the Act? The law requires that you explain to employees what their rights under the Act are when you're onboarding them. Okay? Saying, go read the poster in the break room does not constitute complying with the law. Okay? What you want to do is you want to cover it specifically, and you want to receive you want to give them a document with that and all your other important information, like if they're going to be qualified for health care, you want to have that in that document. And you want them to sign for that. And you want to give them a copy, and you want to put one copy in your employee personnel file. Okay? What would that form look like, you ask? Well, the state did come out with a template for doing this, and that template will be available on the AccessHR website. Okay? Now, you have to use that template. No. What you do need to do is to take a look at what's there, make sure that it's you're covering it in whatever form that you want to do it, but do that cover your, you need to do the same kinds of things for your workers' comp program in other areas. So it's a good document. Make sure that you're doing it. Okay, how can AccessHR help? Well, most employers will need to amend their current sick leave or PTO policies. You're going to have to do something with it. If you need some help in doing that, we can review that with you and walk you through the different options that you have and help you develop policies that best fit your needs. So you may decide that a dual program is better than a single program. You may decide that a single program is correct. You may decide that PTO is the easiest way to go, and so, but you don't want to throw the floodgates open any more than you need to. we can help you with that. Secondly, if you have not done a thorough review of your human resource policies contained in your employee handbook, we can update your handbook or create a new document if that is more appropriate. There have been a number of law changes, as you know, over the last 2 or 3 years. I personally have probably written or rewritten 200 or 300 employee handbooks. And it's important to have an employee handbook that, that talks to your employees, okay? So when I work with a high-tech company in the Silicon Valley, that employee handbook is going to read a little bit differently than if I'm reading, if it's aimed at a production company in Benicia, okay? That's not to talk down to one audience versus another, but what we try to do is to make it, very readable, etc. So that's how we can help. I guess one final thought for you. Your exposure, other than posters and the general record keeping, has to do with denying people the right to use their sick leave benefit under the law. If you are a company of any size, your managers, foremen, supervisors, etc., are the ones who are going to be having the interactions with employee A when employee A wants time off. And if employee A wants time off and you're in the middle of inventory, or I've worked with chemical companies that have continuing processes that have to have people there. I mean, if the supervisor is under pressure to make sure that everything gets done and which requires everybody to be there, and they deny the use of this, or apparently deny the use of their benefits under the law, you're opening yourself up to a whole big can of worms and lawsuits, etc. And as I mentioned, the law is so broad, unscrupulous people will be trying to backdoor you on not only that which is under the law, but other things as well. So you will want to do some training with your management staff and say, look, this is the law, this is what we need to do. If you're going to, for any reason, deny, hold up, etc., use of this for what you consider to be an appropriate reason, kick it up to me or kick it up to whoever's appropriate, so that you don't have your legs cut off from underneath you without you even knowing about it. Okay? If you have any questions, please forward them to your AccessHR rep, who will be glad to assist you. And the contact person that I always go to when I was working from the outside in is Priscilla Henley, because she is so smart and she works so hard for her clients. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Appreciate it. We did have a few questions that came in through the chat, so if I can just take a few more minutes of your time to ask you. Some of them may have been reiterated, but so let's see, the first question. Okay. So do you have to pay out the accrued paid sick leave upon termination?
Answer to that is no. If you just are following the law. If you're rolling it into a PTO program that includes paid vacation time, then the answer is yes. All PTO is looked at the same regardless of how it comes in, and that would have to be paid.
Okay, great. How do you deal with employees who only work a few times per year or on an extended leave of absence?
Employees who only work a few times a year are covered by this law. So you are going to have to keep records of the times that they do work. And once they've worked 90 days, they will have accrued benefits based on the number of hours that they work. So it's a pain, obviously. People on leave of absence, people on leave, the law does not require you to pay people for leave of absence time. So that's not work time, and so you don't need to accrue that. There's a couple of things I've forgotten. Let me just cover those real quickly. The rate that you pay the person is based on the rates that they were making during that time that they were accruing the benefit. So if you have people that work different jobs with different rates, or maybe have a salary or a piecework or something, you're going to have to average, break that down to an hourly rate, average it out, and that's how you pay them. Okay.
Another question had come up to me prior. The question is, this benefit begins July 1. So do they start accruing it on July 1 then? So then the first sick leave pay would not begin 90 days after? Or does it begin now, so on January 2nd if somebody goes out?
I'll have to double check that. My reading of it was that the law just goes into effect as of July 1, so the accrual would begin as of July 1. But I'll double check that and we'll send out a blast to cover that.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to unmute everybody. So if anybody doesn't have any last minute questions, it's 11:26. I will stop this recording right at 11:30 punctually. Everybody now is unmuted. Does anybody else have any more questions?
I have a question. This is Cherie.
Hi, Ms. Cherie.
Hi. I have an employee that works 1 hour a month. That's all she works. And so that comes out to 24 hours in a year. Is she still entitled to 24 hours of accrued sick time?
No, you accrue 1 day of sick leave for every 30 hours worked. So she's going to have to work for you for an awful long time before she's going to have a few days, but she will have some benefits, yeah, and you are going to have to track it.
So she accrues 1 day, and if her 1 day is 1 hour, that's all she's accruing.
That is correct.
Okay.
Another question, what is the accrual rate for part-time employees? It starts at 720 hours worked? That was the question. What is the accrual rate for part-time employees?
You start with the first hour worked. So you're accruing based on when they hit the door. So if I work 40 hours in 1 week, and I work 2 hours in the next week, and I work 6 hours in the next week, I've got 48 hours of accrued time on the books. I've earned 1 point some days of sick leave, and after 90 days, I can use my 1 point some days of sick leave.
So how ridiculous is that?
We only comment on the law as written. We don't comment on the back. Because if I did, I would get myself in AccessHR and all sorts of problems, and we don't need to do that. But that's seriously though, that's why I asked that you might want to read the preamble to this law about where it says the legislature finds all of these conditions, and then what their intent is by passing this legislation. And again, there's the basic supposition that you as an employer take advantage of your employees, that you don't let them off, et cetera, and that to correct this mythical bad situation, we're going to pass this law and aim the cannon at the gnat.
Is there any possibility that this could be extended? As you're aware right now. That's July 1.
Extended? You mean, increased in benefits, et cetera?
Well, meaning could it be extended to January 1, 2016, or have you heard anything? Or
no, I have heard nothing about that. No, matter of fact, they passed this in 14. So if they were going to play with the inception date, it would have happened by now, I think.
Okay. Great. Okay.
So here's another question.
Yes.
I'm going to start accruing this effective date of July 1st. But any employee hired after July 1st, I'm going to start accruing from the date of hire. Am I safe doing that?
Give me the first part of that again.
Okay, so
the second part of that is kosher. Yeah. What was the preamble?
The law goes into effect on July 1st, so existing
Right.
employees that have been here for years, I can start that accrual as of July 1st, right?
Yeah. Do you have a sick leave policy as is or a PTO policy?
I have PTO, but not for part-time people.
Right. Okay. So for part-time people, the people who are not covered by your existing policy, you should start as of July 1.
Okay,
All of them.
all of them. Okay,
Yep. You don't want to make your existing employees second-class citizens. And that's why you have to, excuse me, even if you're going to run two systems, you're going to have to expand that definition of what valid sick leave is, or else people who are only working part-time for you are going to be able to take greater advantage of the system than the people who work full-time, regular, and been there for a long time, which you don't want to have happen.
Right. Okay.
Good.
Okay, appreciate everybody's time today. I know there's probably a lot more outstanding questions. Please email them directly to me. I'm happy to loop Leanne or whomever and get the answers to you. Thank you very much for joining us today.